So hello everyone, welcome to the webinar organized by KBS Certification Services Limited, known for business sustainability. Today, the webinar is organized by KBS on the provide the understanding for LCA, especially in case of industrial applications. So we'll be covering a brief overview. What is LCA? How it can benefit, how conducting the LCA can benefit the industries, how can they make it as a competitive market advantage, how can they take a benefit of conducting LCA in reducing their environmental impact of the product that they are manufacturing, and what are the basic things, basic parameters that one should be aware of for conducting an LCA. So it will be a quite an overview of an LCA, how, why, and to whom it is applicable. So starting with the basic introduction of the KBS journey and the KBS achievements. So the KBS certification services is a third-party assurance and certification body which was established in the year 2005 and has completed previous year 20 years, a 2 decade of experience. The company started its journey from 9001 ISO 19001 certification. Then year on year, the company has expanded its footprints in the field of certification by including ISO 45001, 14000, and various other ISO certifications. The year 2011 was a golden year for the company. We were declared as the first validation verification body by the UNFCCC under the compliance mechanism, clean development mechanism. So we were the first in the Southeast Asia to get the recognition from the UN under this. Since 2011, we have been continuously validating, verifying the climate change projects. 2013 to 18 was an era of expansion again. We expanded our footprints to Dubai, Indonesia, Korea, Singapore, and Thailand. Also increases the accreditation from EIAC. In 2019, we received several approvals and accreditations under VCS, Gold Standards, and other climate change registries. 2020, we got the accreditation under GCC and ISO 14064. 2021, the company got empaneled with B, Social Carbon Registry. 2022, we expanded our operations in UAE and under the safety training. In 2023, the company entitled for Service Limited and opened an office in Bangalore. In 2025, previous year, we have opened our corporate office in Gurgaon. So this was a journey of 20 years of KBS Certification Services Limited. Presenting to us next the various locations at which our presence is throughout the globe. So we are serving the clients in 60 plus countries. Offices are at 11 locations in 7 plus countries. A team of 200 auditors globally spread out are working with KBS, and there is a separate vertical under KBS Certification Services Limited that is known as KBS Training Academy, having 50 plus trainers. So we have our presence in Italy, Dubai, Bangladesh, Korea, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia. Within India, we have our office in Mumbai, Bangalore, Gurgaon, and Faridabad. Next, I'll like to display the various services which KBS Certification Service Limited provides, the portfolio of services that we have. We are providing sustainability services, climate change service, management system certification, product certification, energy audit, third-party inspection. So management system certification, all the ISOs which are applicable on the industries and to the organizations. Product certification like CE marking, ROSH compliance, energy audit, third-party inspection, climate change, the carbon validation and verification of climate change projects, the carbon credit projects under various registries and the voluntary schemes, and the sustainability services. So today we are having the major participants from the domain of sustainability. So I would like to focus more on the sustainability services that the KBS has in its basket. So we are providing a GHG validation verification service under ISO 14064 and has got an accreditation and approval from NABCB in India. We are providing the services for under AA 1000 AS accountability standard, and we are the authorized license provider for that. Also, we have our service for declaring the event, the services, the organization as carbon neutral under ISO 14068. We are also providing the sustainability assurance, ESG assurance under the various standards like GRI standards. Next, we are also going for the energy audit, water audit, BRSR assurance, CDP disclosures assurance, gap assessments, roadmap to assurance of the roadmap to the net zero of a company. So these are the various services which KBS has under its profile of sustainability. From now on, here onwards, I like to introduce my colleague, Mr. Prince, who will be there with you for next 45 minutes of time and who will be giving you the various insights about the LCA. So here on to Prince.
So thank you, Mr. Dushyant, for a nice introduction for the organization and for myself also. So just for the brief, I will be taking a minute just to introduce with the webinar and about myself. So this webinar is dedicated to LCA Bootcamp, Understanding LCA for Industrial Applications. This will be covering quite introductory part of the LCA and its application for the industries. Then a little about me. I am Prince Sharma, a certified professional for ISO 14064, and I'm also a lead AP for BD plus C. Then I'm also a LCA and EPD expert. I have done about 10 projects on the same. So coming to the agenda for the today's webinar, this webinar is dedicated to these points. The points are following: introduction to life cycle assessment. Here we will be covering environmental part of the LCA, then costing part of the LCA, and the social LCA. The basic definition of the LCA, and then we will be covering insights from implemented case studies where we will be discussing and establishing why this LCA is important for the industry. And in previously with the case studies, what we have already and what LCA provides us. Then roles and significance of LCA. What is the role and significance of LCA? We will be discussing here. Then scope of LCA sector-wise. So every sector, what are the products and what type of studies we do. So that we will be covering in this section, and business and environmental benefits of LCA. So if a entrepreneur or organization leader is deciding we are going for the LCA, then what are the benefits of that? So we will be also covering that. Then system boundary we will be discussing and diving deep into this. Then we will be discussing the relevance of references of the LCA. So we will be basically just introducing this ISO standards and what are the standards we focus on during LCA studies. So now who should attend this webinar? So basically a product manufacturer or industry leader could understand, if wants to understand the LCA, can attend this webinar. Then working professionals in sustainability, ESG, or any environmental roles like ESG can attend this webinar. It is helpful for them. Then students interested in life cycle assessment can also attend this webinar for their introductory part of the LCA. Then anyone who is looking to understand the big picture of the and perspective of the LCA can attend this webinar. Now coming to the final content of the LCA. So first, what is the life cycle assessment? So life cycle assessment is a structured, transparent, and science-based methodology used to assess environmental impacts associated with all stages of the product life cycle, that is from raw material extraction to production, use, and end of the life of the product. Now, coming to what are the studies that we do for the LCA. So if we talk about the trend, then environmental part or environmental life cycle assessment is the one thing that we always heard about. But apart from that, I would also like to introduce two more type study of the LCA that we do generally. Those are social life cycle assessment and life cycle costing. If we talk about the relevance of these studies, so environmental part, I know that people are knowing this, what is the use of the environmental life cycle assessment. So generally, when we see the EPDs, the eco-leveling, or some research part of the LCA, we generally go for the environmental part of that. But whenever we want to do a 360-degree analysis of some product, services, then we go for all of the three verticals of the life cycle assessment. Now, first, let's take this social life cycle assessment. So, social life cycle assessment is an assessment approach which focuses on the social and socio-economic impact of one product or manufacturing or process on the biodiversity, on people, and environmental sphere. Now, what are the stakeholders for the social life cycle assessment? So the part of the studies are the work. So in this part, suppose we are having some mining project in some area, then due to that mining, what is happening on the site and what is happening on the vegetation and biodiversity and people working there. So that study is conducted under the social life cycle assessment. The objective is clear and simple. Social life cycle assessment gives you social risk identification and the performance evaluation of the society. It is a decision supporting tool which helps you in development of your project or a process. Life cycle cost analysis is our third vertical of the life cycle assessment. Life cycle costing is one of the very trending part secondary to the environmental life cycle assessment. So when we talk about the life cycle assessment, so where is the significance of this and relevance of this? So whenever we are having big projects like some infra projects, or then a big project which is having a significant amount of the investment in that, then we of course go for the LCC. Whenever we have fixed our environmental studies or impacts, and then we are confused that which one is better for in use case. So which one is giving a better costing part. So for that, we go for the life cycle cost analysis. Purpose is simple. So it gives alternative comparison, gives cost optimization, long-term savings, and maximization. Design selection support is something that life cycle cost helps in. So it is used in the early design phase, and multiple design, if you have multiple design alternative, it can solve your problem and deciding the best with the same performance and different cost. Or I can say the optimized cost. In GRIHA certification, for the green building certification, we use the life cycle costing. So this is something that in green building is already executed. Now coming to our next part of the life cycle assessment study with a few case studies that I would like to discuss with you. So if I talk about the Maruti Suzuki, in this Maruti Suzuki example, if I ask you why Maruti Suzuki is a leader in the market, what they have which is making different from other companies or car manufacturing brands. You could say it is mileage, it could be low cost, innovation, or leadership. So yes, of course they are, but apart from them, there is one different distinction that they have. That is the 360-degree approach during their project development and its innovation. Lifecycle assessment is really good for them to develop those parts. And if I particularly say, then they are using engineered plastics and aluminum in their engines. And that is a really innovative point. If we talk about the engine technology, we always see the steel, and very few times we see the aluminum. But in case of the Maruti Suzuki, they are trying to induce the plastic for the same service, same work as the steel is delivering. So they are using conduits in their engines. And why it is making a difference? Because plastic and conduits or parts of the engines are single-use type. So every time they are, since they used, they will be like going again in the manufacturing unit and recycled again. So the life of the plastic and the steel or aluminum is different. So if we are using plastic in the same low energy, or since this steel or aluminum is energy intensive, so in the very first place you have to use a lot of energy to manufacture that part or forge that part. And when we talk about the plastic, you don't need to put that much energy in that. So it is less in energy intensive compared to steel. When we come to this procurement part of the raw materials, then steel is something that is less abundant in the environment. So in that perspective, life cycle assessment gives you better choices, deciding the better materials for your product, deciding better other processes related objectives that can be served by the LCA. So a life cycle assessment could be a innovative and decision-making tool for your product. Now coming to our next example, that is EV and ICE engine. So this study is based on the basic sedan cars, and in that the cell of the car is not included. The only part of the study is engines and power transmission systems. So it seems that EVs are environment friendly and barely harm the environment in comparison to the ICE engines. But does the life cycle assessment confirm so? Let's deep dive in the exploration of the life cycle assessment for the EV and ICE engines from raw material extraction to final disposal process. The resource consumption, waste reduction, water consumption, energy consumption will be some of the parameters that we will be looking in. So this study covers cradle to grave life cycle stages car, and if I conclude it, then EV is require more 600% natural resources compared to ICE engines. Why this is happening? Why we require more resources in EV than ICE engines? This is happening because the material or raw material is used in the EVs is less abundant, like lithium. So we need to extract more and more and mine more and more for that particular quantity of the material. Coming to our resources, these are about coming to our waste. So EV produces or generates more 600% waste during its manufacturing process. EV manufacturing requires about 450 times 450% of more fresh water than ICE engines. It emits about 165% more harmful substances on the during the manufacturing processes. EV emits 300% higher harmful substances compared to ICE engines during operational phase. Why I am quoting these numbers? I hope you are not get bored on that, but the simple view on this is not to remind the numbers. This is about just to give you clear idea why life cycle assessment matters. Something that is bad, something that looks bad is not bad actually, and something that we think that it is sustainable is really not sustainable. So for that, or to reduce those numbers that I have quoted you in hundreds times of the percentage can be reduced by the life cycle assessment. So this study is not the end. This is the time when EV and EV were only developing or in the very starting phase. So coming to the next slide, glass versus PET bottles. So in this case study, we are going to just discuss which one is better and why. So the LCA result shows that PET bottles generally have lower life cycle environmental impacts from natural mineral water. While for sparkling water, the preferable option depends on the specific categories. The number of uses of the glass bottles and distribution distances are two most influential parameters as reuse rates increases and transport distance decreases. Reusable glass bottles become more environmentally competitive. Therefore, no single packaging solution is universal. Sustainable life cycle assessment is essential for case-specific decision making. So in production phase, PET bottles are low energy intensive. To manufacturing, the PET bottles requires less energy, while the glass requires very high energy for the melting and achieving about 1500 degrees centigrade. Then if we talk about the human toxicity, then glass bottles are less human toxic than the PET bottles. Manufacturing, if we talk about the material characteristics and manufacturing thing, then PET bottles are lightweight and glass is heavy. So this difference in the material and its weight directly impact its transportation. So in the transportation phase, PET bottles emit or cause low emissions. Yeah. Sorry for the interruption. So now coming to our transportation phase, PET bottles causes low emissions due to efficient logistics. Why? Because PET bottles are really less or lower in weight than the glass bottles, and there is also a danger with the glass bottle that they break easily. So what it gives a system or thinking that for long distances, PET bottles should be used. If we are using the PET bottles, recyclability is a major cause. If somebody or some organization can recycle bottles, then PET bottle is a great point for them for the great distances. And for some local businesses, or the product is only transporting in only local distances, then glass bottles will be great option for them. Glass bottle is reusable and also recyclable better than the PET bottles, and it affects the life cycle impact really highly on the environment. So I'm not trying to conclude that the PET bottles are better or glass bottles are better. It is you or the manufacturer who should decide which one is better based on the life cycle assessment. So it's always case on case which one is better and which one is not for that particular manufacturing unit. Now, if we talk on about our last topic that is, of this case study is single-use cutlery versus ceramic versus clay pots. So single-use cutlery is something which is a really high impact on the environment during its disposal phase. And when we talk about the reusable disposal plates, its impact about 85 to 90% during its use phase, that is during the washing. And in that, there are 2 points that, or 2 variables in that. The first one is water and the soap. If your soap is very hard on the water, then it will be causing a very high environmental impact on the biodiversity or the fishes, and it will be polluting more and more your water bodies. Then water usage quantity will also impact your product's environmental impact. So these are some of the variables in that. Then its distribution. So since single-use cutlery is something that is going to transport heavily, or it is logistics heavy, then the impact of the transportation for the single-use cutlery will be very high. In the end of the life point of view or stage, reusable cutlery, that is ceramic cutlery, will be having a very low impact, because in the very long run, about in thousands of use, it does not really impact much on the environment. But if we talk about the single-use cutleries, it is having a really high impact, and particularly when it is thrown in the landfill or having incineration as a process for the end of the life of that product. Also, taking one more example of the clay pots, if we talk about the single-use clay pots, what it looks, we generally think that it is sustainable, it is coming from the Mother Earth, and it is good for the environment. But it is not really the case. You are using the micronutrient soil for manufacturing the cups, clay pots, and then using a very high energy intensive process to prepare them, and then after using a single first time and throwing it causes a lot of burden on the environment, because the micronutrients of the soil are being dyed, and there is nothing lost in that soil. So in the conclusion, LCA shows reusable systems are not automatically better, and they outperforms only when high reuse and efficient washing are achieved. No material is inherently sustainable. Performance only depends on the system conditions. So it depends on the variables that you are choosing your product have. There might be some points where your product might be looking sustainable like clay pot, or it is not having any validated thing to support that. Now coming to our next topic, which is why LCA, why we should choose it, what it gives us. Life cycle assessment empowers us to make better choices by understanding the true environmental cost, what we design, produce, and consume. It ensures that solving one problem does not silently create another elsewhere in the system. LCA is used whenever decision matters, because what gets measured across the life is what truly managed. Apart from that, why it is important? So in India and all over the world, regulatory guidelines are getting strict. Then cleaner technology is one of the terms that is echoing in every policy of the government. Measuring and comparing the impact is the new trend of the market. And the big companies, big manufacturers are always trying to go get those products or the components which are having their emissions measured. And for that, you need to have your life cycle assessment conducted for your product. Coming to the next slide. So why LCA? Again, everyone who wants to be in demand, everyone who wants to avoid regulatory risk, everyone who wants to be relevant in future, everyone who wants to expand in the market, everyone who wants to evaluate and select improved material and service options for product development based on the evidence. So from why LCA to just let us discuss relevance of the life cycle assessment. So if we have any product in the world and any services, life cycle assessment is peculiar to decide whether and what processes are and how we can do better in that. What processes require optimization for its betterment and environment friendly claims. So it is required for the construction, whether it is a construction product or it is itself a building. We require the LCA study for both. Nowadays, the green building certifications are requiring the LCA report for their buildings and EPDs for their products. Then what are the products? What could be the product? So any kind of building going for the green building certification needs the green LCA report, whether it is LEED, whether it is GRIHA, whether it is IGBC. Everyone requires either for the product LCA for the product or for the buildings or for both. Then apparels and textiles. So clothings, covers, then interior fabrics, etc. are some of the basic examples that you always hear or can see in the environment. But apart from that, textiles also have agrotech, fabrics or textile used in the agriculture, then meditech, textiles used in the medical field, then mobile tech, pack tech, sport tech, build tech, cloth tech, home tech, then geotech and oceotech, and the Indutech. Indutech is used, textiles used in the industries. Coming to automobile, in automobile, every system, whether it is a both vehicle, passenger vehicle, commercial vehicle, two-wheeler vehicles, bikes, or a cycle, every system need a life cycle assessment nowadays. Then its component, whether it is energy storage system, its powertrain system, structural system, interior system, or any replacement components require life cycle assessment to be worthy to be chosen by the big manufacturers. Similarly, for the food, agricultural products, whether it is a chips or packaged food or fruit that is coming from directly on the farm. So LCA can help in every aspect or in every project there. Then chemicals, so acids and like adipic acid, nitrogen, sulfur, or H2SO4. So such kind of chemicals or the gases that we have as chemicals or fertilizers that we have, every product needs a life cycle assessment to ensure that it is having good environmental clearances. So now coming to the oil and gases. Oil and gases, it is also having life cycle assessment as a really important aspect of this to say that this is environmental friendly process. Coming to electronics, every electronics gadget that you see needs a life cycle assessment report to establish that they are good and environment friendly. Coming to pharma particularly, the pharma sector is also growing a lot, and in that also maybe its packaging system or medical devices or storage system. So everything require a life cycle assessment to ensure that they are having good environmental impact or not being harsh on the environment. Apart from that, I'm like I'm echoing this word environment. So this is not just environment. It is I would like to just add that the costing part also can be optimized with the life cycle assessment. Then coming to our next slide, that measurable outcomes of life cycle assessment and the benefits to the business of this life cycle assessment. Why we should invest in the life cycle assessment? So particularly for R&D of your project or product. If you want to understand that what are the materials that I can choose for my product, which are very good for my product, or if you are confused between 2 or 3 materials, what material is having a good impact costing wise and environmental wise, then you can go for the life cycle assessment. So apart from the product building, for the product level certification, you also need the life cycle assessment. So eco labeling, EPD, DPP, or Green Pro certification, particularly in India, which is a level 1 EPD, requires life cycle assessment. Building and infra projects also require life cycle assessment reports. Then positive product boundary. Since people are getting aware more and more about the sustainability and the planet, so they are also try to see those environment friendly marks or the labels on the product. So this is not just for like some people or brands use these marks randomly without knowing or without having these credentials, and in future that will be cause them greenwashing, which will be impacting their brands negatively. So to avoid that, to go better in the future, to impact positively on the society, on the people, then of course positive branding is really important for a business, and so the life cycle assessment is. Then regulatory compliances and establishment of the primary data. You will be clearing all the regulatory compliances like CBAM, that if you are exporting the projects in Europe, then of course you will require the primary data for all that. And after establishing the primary data, you will be having or clearing the regulatory compliances. So it helps in both. It gives you the primary data and act as a decisive factor that strongly influence the final selection of your product. Then coming to our next part of the webinar, that is a reference to conduct life cycle assessment. So what are the documents? What are those standards ISO provided, or references that we can go for to see which process is better, how to do that, what standard says on what process. So for that, we have ISO 14040, ISO 14044, ISO 14067 for the products. So let's go one by one on these. So ISO 14040 is principle and framework to define LCA and its overall framework. It does not give you how to conduct the LCA. It just gives you basic definitions and basic processes of the LCA. So just to establish what LCA is, you can go for the ISO 14040. To understand what data is required, what are the processes, how to collect data, what data, how to refine the data, and what are the processes in deep, is written in the ISO 14044. It's a requirements and guidelines for the life cycle assessment. Coming to our third part, ISO 14067 is standard for the product LCA. It gives you only one impact, that is climate change and CO2 equivalent. Then ISO 14025, it is for the EPDs. If somebody have objective to prepare or draft one EPD, then with the ISO 14040 and 44, you require ISO 14025. Apart from that, we also have the core PCR. Core PCRs are those documents which have the guidelines for the product specific requirement of the LCA. So ISO 21930 is a standard which gives guidelines on the all construction product in the world. But when we talk about the Europe has its separate standard, that is EN 15804. This standard you can use in India and anywhere in the world, but for Europe specific products, you need to add that. So these are the references for the product level certification. Then we also have the product category rules. These product category rules gives you the general requirement or guidelines for the product specific requirements. So suppose if you have the construction product in your hand and wants to do the LCA, then the first choice will be EN 15804 for the product category rules. Of course, you need to implement 140, 40 and 44 and then 15804 for the product in Europe, or in India. It is not going in Europe, then you may choose ISO 21930. After this core principles, core guide or core PCR, you need to refer one product category rules, which will be giving you the direct category or requirement of that product category. So suppose in the construction industry, we also have the furniture. So furniture is not something that you can do in the same process like a cement. So furniture will require some other product category rules. So those rules are basic fundamentals for to conduct the life cycle assessment for the furniture. So for that, you need a separate PCR. Coming to our next slide, system boundaries of the life cycle assessment. System boundaries defines what life cycle assessment and processes are included or excluded in the LCA study, such as raw material extraction, manufacturing, use, end of the life stages, or recycling of that particular material. First, let us discuss the cradle to cradle system boundary for a product. In the cradle to cradle, we generally takes a raw material extraction to the end of the life and final use of that product in other products. So it is a circular process where the product is not getting out of that circle. Then second, cradle to gate, it is catering to raw material extraction to final leaving of the manufacturing unit doors. So that part comes under the cradle to gate. Then cradle to grave is the study product system covering all life cycle stages from raw material acquisition through production, use, and final disposal of that product. The final one is gate to grave analysis. So in that product system covering life cycle stages from the factory gate through the use and end of the life treatment. So these boundaries are not the end for the system boundary or deciding the system boundaries. Apart from that, there could be different other categories also, and so these system boundaries are really depending on your goal and scope. So this is about our course that we are releasing a comprehensive training program on ISO 14040 and 44. It will be including all the training for life cycle assessment, how to conduct and what is the methodology. You can join this on for the weekdays batch on 26th to 27th March, and for the weekend batches on 4th to 5th March 2026. So for any queries, anything that you have in your mind, you can ask me, or any question that you have from the webinar or any point, you can ask me.
Yeah, thank you, Prince. Thanks for the detailed insights which you have shared with the participants of the webinar related to the LCA. I hope definitely the participants will be able to put this knowledge gained through the webinar in their work area and or in the case of their undergoing research or studies. And nicely you have covered all the topics like giving a foundation of what is LCA, then just highlighting the importance of the LCA to the industries, and thus touching with the points of how it is being conducted, and a very well example of a comparison that is a really a nice example that you have quoted, and that gives quite an understanding of how LCA can be seen for anyone who is having a little bit of knowledge towards the environmental impact, the GHG information and other things. So that was a very well coverage of the different aspects related to the LCA. And as discussed and being informed by Mr. Prince in the webinar, that we are also going to launch our course on LCA. A full-fledged training course is there on LCA that is soon going to be launched, and the course is still available on our website. Please feel to get registered in the course and get a detailed information. It is a certified course. Post the course, you will be getting a certificate of completion of the training, and I'm pretty sure attending this detailed course. It's a 2-day course, and we are coming with both weekend and the weekday batch. So as per the request from the various delegates that we have received, the course will coverage the overview of the ISO 14040 and 44 and a hands-on experience of preparation of the LCA study report. And it will be a kind of a thorough in and out course for conducting a life cycle assessment for any product and for the organization. So definitely the person who is interested to know more about LCA can register in this course and gain the knowledge and put one more feather in their professional career. So thank you all. Thank you for joining the